Yeah.
Okay, so what we're gonna do next, or like for this like other part of our notes here, is we're gonna now use what we call this chunking, and I think of it more as like substitution. So to look at this n plus 5 to the 4th power, if we were actually to try to solve something of that n plus 5 to the 4th power, we'd have to take n plus 5 and multiply it 4 times. We'd be doing all this kind of crazy FOIL. That would be horrible. So what we're going to try to do instead is what we do basically is we try to find a value or a set of values that we can use and substitute for. So I am going to make this equal 0 first, kind of show you guys. It might be more obvious if I do that. And I'll help you guys with deciding what your chunk should be. And that's kind of like the substitution. So to make this move equal 0, so I'm going to move this m over. So this should equal 0. And this one's a little bit tougher to notice what the chunk should be. So I noticed something about this that, and I'm going to give you one that's quite this difficult to start with, but I noticed I could pull out a -1 out of both of those terms, so I'm going to do that. So most of the problems you would get probably would look something more like this. This is, like I said, it is a little bit trickier than I wanted it to be to begin with. So what we're going to do is, they say, find out solutions using chunking. And when I say that, what I mean by chunking is I'm basically going to say that m plus 5 to the 4th power is too complicated. So I'm going to say, I'm just going to pick a variable of u equals m plus 5. So this is going to be my chunk. What that does for us is everywhere I see an m plus 5, I'm going to put u instead. So I'm going to write this as u to the 4th minus 1u. So I'm choosing to rewrite this problem so that it's not as complicated. So I'm basically replacing the thing that I see twice in here with a different variable. And I'm going to solve this new blue equation now. What do you guys want to do to get to solve this? Just focus on the blue though now. What can we do first? The u. So, well, we're going to pull out, yeah, the GCF, right? I'm going to pull that u out here. So I have two solutions here, two parts. So I have u equals 0, and I have u to the 3rd minus 1 equals 0. I'm going to move that 1 over. U to the 3rd equals 1. In order to solve this, I need to take the cube root of each side. And cube root of 1 is just 1. So I get two answers for my u. That's obviously not my answer. They didn't ask me to solve for u. They wanted us to solve for m. So what we're going to do now is, now I know what u is, so I'm going to set up two equations. U is 0, u is 1. I'm going to set up an equation for each of those. So if u is 0, I'd have 0 equals m plus 5. If u is 1, I'd have 1 equals m plus 5. Because we decided that u equals m plus 5. So the second half of this problem is, now I have to solve this new equation for m. So I get two answers, -5 and -4 for my m. So these are like my final answers. But that substitution in the middle helps me to get to those answers. And this is very different, but at the same time, once you realize what the chunks should be, it's going to be really helpful. And I will give you guys helpful tips on your homework on what to use for your chunks. I'm like telling you what to use for you. So if you guys could flip the page over, I do have a typo on the back side, so if we could flip it over, we're going to fix that. So if you could change the 8 to a negative 8 in this first problem. So if you notice, my 8 should be a negative 8 there. So if you could put that in as a negative instead, or just put a negative in front of it or something. So in our example 6a here, so again, really complicated. I have that 6, like the 4 times 6x, 6 to the x to the second power. That's really complicated. But I see I have this 6 to the x power in both places, and that's really complicated. So instead, I'm going to call that u. So in this problem, I'm going to say u is 6 to the x power. And I'm just going to kind of set that aside and like try to ignore that and solve it now using my u's. So I'm going to rewrite this problem. So again, I figure out what my u needs to be. I kind of just set that aside, solve the new problem using u's. Now this one again is the kind of factoring we just were practicing. So where I want it to be, I want to, again, I know it's going to be 3 and 1, and actually since there's a negative here, I know these are both going to be a negative. And I want to multiply to get 4u to the second, so it's going to be like 2 and 2 or 4 and 1, and I think this is really similar to the one we did, again, off the homework. You guys picked good ones because they're ones I ended up using. I believe it's going to be 2u and 2u, because this would be a negative 6, and then this would be a negative 2, so that would be a negative 8. And again, if you want to do the x thing, you can do that as well. It works the same way. So we have to solve each of these. Again, I'm not worried about the u part of it yet. I'm going to go ahead and solve this just like we would have solved our normal problems here. So we find out u is 3/2, and then also 1/2. But again, we're not solving for u. We're still trying to figure out what x is. So now I go back to what I know. And I'm hoping this part of it is fine with you guys. Now we have to take that, and we know what u is, so we're going to put that back in for u. So I'm going to have 3/2 equals 6x, and I'm going to have 1/2 equals 6 to the, 6 to the x, not 6x. I said that wrong. Now, you probably forgot, this has been a while, but we did review it a little bit today. When I want to get that exponent out, this is where we use logarithms. Log base 6 of 3/2 should equal x, and log base 6 of 1/2 should also equal x. And if you forgot how to do those logs, remember this is where we do log of 3/2 divided by the log of 6. Sorry, I'm running out of space here. And you can use 3/2 as 1.5 if that's easier. I got 0.22. And negative 0.38. 0.39, I guess. Now, this will only work for us if there's something we can, like, something that matches. So like in letter B, there's something that matches. So again, I can't just, like, these are harder problems to come up with because, like when I try to write new ones, it's kind of a little bit complicated because I have to make sure the same thing shows up in 2 spots. So these are really special case problems, but this concept is gonna help you guys moving on when you take like a calculus class, you do something similar where we call it like U substitution, where you substitute in. So, like if you said U substitution for a student in calculus, I think you get to that in Calc 1, maybe not. It's been a long time since I had regular Calc. So. All right, we're gonna look at this next one. You guys can hang in with me here. We're gonna do these 2 more problems, and then like I said, I'm gonna give you guys hints for the homework on what you should use for your U's. Sometimes the U's are really obvious. Like I feel like in letter B, U is really obvious, right? Like it's got to be the same thing in both spots. Sometimes it's less obvious, like as in the one we saw. On the first one, it was less obvious. So in this case, I'm going to use my U as x plus 1 over 2. So I then put U in place of anywhere that x plus 1 over 2 shows up. Now if we want to solve by factor, we need it to equal 0, so I'm going to move that over. And again, we're going to take out a U. And then I have 2 equations we can set up. So we get U is 0, and then also positive and negative 3. So I should get 3 answers for this time. So I'm going to have to set up 3 different options for my x value. We didn't include them all. So I put those in for U now. On all of these, I'd like to get rid of the divide by 2 first, so I'm just going to multiply by 2 kind of all the way across the board to get those all to cancel. So I'm going to have 0 equals x plus 1, 6 equals x plus 1, and negative 6 equals x plus 1. Because when I multiply by 2, I get those to go away. So I get 3 answers here. logs in there, so obviously you're super excited about that one, I'm sure. My arm is still bruised from donating blood. I know, that was over a week ago. Crazy. It didn't ever hurt. I don't know. Any thoughts on what you think our U should be in this case? What looks really tough about this problem? The log, right? So let's make that our U. So we're going to say that U is log base 7 of that whole x plus 4. So pretty complicated U, but we're getting that out of there then. So this is going to be my U, this is going to be my U. Once I get that out of there, this problem looks a lot easier to work with. So this part of it shouldn't be the difficult part. That's why I wanted the factoring to kind of become more second nature to you guys. Because if the factoring's tough on top of the rest of it, it obviously is going to be more of a difficult problem. The tough part will be figuring out what the actual x is. So we have U and U. I want to multiply to 15, add to -8. So -5, -3, right? So I got U is 5 and U is 3. So my next step with this, once we get our U's, now we have to put those back in and figure out how to solve this. So 5 equals log base 7 of x plus 4. And 3 equals log base 7 of x plus 4. But we should know how to do this. Again, that's switching back to that exponential form. So, and again, that's why we tried reviewing some of that. So the base is 7, the power is 5, equals x plus 4. So we're able to rearrange that and take the logs out of it and make it exponential. Same thing over here. The base is 7, the power is 3, and that's going to equal x plus 4. Now 7 to the 5th is a pretty big number, I think. That's okay. I think it's still writable here, yeah. So we're going to move our 4 over. Move our 4 over. And we get our 2 answers for x. Okay? So, for your homework tonight, you're going to want to write these, I mean, if you don't want to, I guess you don't have to. These hints are going to be really helpful to you guys, just to remind you guys of what to do for chunking. Some are more obvious than the others. I think number 1 is one of the tougher questions in there. So if you want to get started on number 1 and try it a little bit, I'd be glad to help you guys with it. But I actually think the assignment, there's some questions in there that get pretty straightforward. I wouldn't say easy, but that first question is probably the toughest one. So make sure you write those hints down, yeah, or take a picture of it, whatever.